Hello again. I'm going to make some Easter biscuits. Traditionally they have currants in. I'm not very keen on currants, so actually I'm going to leave them out, and it's quite acceptable to do that because the spices are lovely. It's a good opportunity as well to use some of your more interesting biscuit cutters. So see what you think about these. Now I've got the oven on to gas mark 4, which is 180 degrees Celsius or 160 if you've got a fan oven, and I've got 2 baking trays ready that I've lined with my non-stick magic carpet type of stuff. You can use greaseproof, it just makes sure that they won't stick to the tray for you. And in my mixing bowl I have got 100 grams of unsalted butter, and I'm going to add 75 grams of caster sugar and mix that with my little hand mixer. If you wanted to double this, it will make a lot of biscuits. This quantity makes about 30. If you want to make loads, I suggest you use a stand mixer because it's quite a dry dough. So butter and sugar, I'm going to cream those together. There we are. It takes a minute or two, but eventually it goes into that lovely creamy texture that we expect. Now the next thing we're going to add is an egg yolk. We don't want the white. So I'm going to show you my really nice way of separating an egg. And all we do is take the egg and crack it, open it out onto a plate. And I know that there are people who do this tipping from one side to the other, but the sides of the egg shell are quite sharp, and often you break the egg yolk, and then if you're making meringues, that's hopeless because the meringues won't whisk. So we've got our egg there. We take an egg cup and we sit it over the yolk and we pour away the white into another container. And sometimes it clings a bit to the egg yolk, so just move your egg cup a bit, give it a wiggle, and then you'll get more of the white to go into your little bowl. So there's our egg yolk, and that goes in next. We give it a mix. I just have to wipe my hands. So let's mix in our egg yolk. Now we move on to the flour and the spices, and I have got 200 grams of plain flour, and I'm going to add the spices to it. So it's half a teaspoon of cinnamon, and then it's also half a teaspoon of mixed spice, and that'll give these a lovely flavour. There we are. Now sometimes you find that recipes say sieve the two together. To be honest with you, if you give it a good stir, it's going in the mixer. It's going to be mixed in the bowl by the mixer, so they'll get incorporated nicely. So then we've got to get this in, and it's quite a lot, so I'm going to do it in 2 goes. So half to start with. If you do it all at once, it'll fly up as a cloud and you'll get covered. So half to begin with, and when that's mixed in, put the second half in. So that's that. Now, the rest of it, just go around there as well. I haven't stood it on a mat today because I want to be able to turn the bowl to make sure everything's getting blended well. Now at this stage, you can see it's a very, very dry mixture. The best thing to do is to add a little bit of milk, a tablespoon of milk. That will just moisten it enough. And now I'm going to squeeze it together with my hand. It's a fine crumb that we've got there, and the warmth of your hand, you can see it makes it start to stick. We've broken up the butter quite nicely, everything's mixed in well. and the warmth of your hand will actually now create a dough. So round and round, leaning on it, getting it all to stick, and we're nearly there. Now if you were going to be adding currants, you would have added them just before you began to knead, and it would be 50 grams of currants. They tend to burn, I find. That's why I don't like to put them in the biscuits. Okay, so there we are, there's our dough. We're going to roll it on the table, so we're going to need a little bit of extra flour. So we'll just get some of these things out of the way. A little bit of flour on the worktop, not too much. And then we'll start to roll this out. A little bit on the top. If you were going to double the quantity, I would cut the dough in half and roll half at a time because it will get so big. And I've got a bunny and I've got a chick. Very Easterish. And my trays are ready. Palette knife is a useful thing to have. It's very, very bendy. So if they stick, you can get right underneath them to get them off the table and get them onto the baking tray. So just roll. Always roll forwards and backwards, don't roll sideways because it'll affect the thickness of your dough. You'll get thick edges and thin edges. Because if you turn it like this, you'll press harder with this hand and it'll get thin on this side. So just forwards and backwards. And you're aiming for about 4 or 5 millimeters thick. It gets more difficult to move as it gets bigger. So sort of half a centimetre thick. And the good thing about this is that they don't spread in the oven. So if you make lots, you can get them quite close together on the tray. If you're going to use different size cutters, so like a dinosaur or another shape that's quite a big one, I would put all of those big ones on one tray and the smaller ones on the other because they will cook at different times. So there's our bunny. We can get him out with the palette knife and get him on the tray. And you just keep going until you've used up all your dough, and then you re-roll your scraps and cut some more. There we are, 34 little biscuits I think, and a tiny blob left over which I could flatten and just put on the tray. See what happens to that. Mind you, I haven't got much space. So there we are, that's just a little bit of leftover dough. Now they're going to go in the oven and they're going to cook for 15 minutes, and they should be just slightly tinged with brown around the edges, and they'll smell lovely. If you wanted to, you could make a concession to the currants and just put one in for an eye on each of these, but I'm not even going to do that because I really don't like currants. So let's get them in the oven, 15 minutes at gas mark 4. There we are, I've got the top shelf quite high, and when they come out I'll put the second shelf up just for a few minutes, I expect. So set the timer for 15 and the smell will be lovely. Around you. Now the timer's gone and the top shelf are looking lovely, just tinged with brown, and you can see they haven't spread at all, so this is a great one for getting as many on the tray as you can. Second one is going to go up and they'll probably have another 3 or 4 minutes, but what we need to do straight away is coat these in caster sugar. Now if you want to ice them, if you're working with a child and you want to flood them with glacé icing, just let them cool a bit and then put them on a wire rack, and when they're absolutely cold, decorate them. I just want these to have that sort of glistening effect, so I'm going to just sprinkle them with caster sugar. Do it while they're hot because the steam will start to melt the sugar and it will stick better. And you will waste some, I'm sorry about this. Depends how good you are at little shakes with your hand. So if this is going to be too much, you can give them a shake and tip some off. But you need to get this done while they're really, really hot. And in truth, you're only using probably a couple of teaspoons of sugar for this. So having got them sugared, we'll leave them to cool and then put them on a wire rack and they'll be ready to eat. Obviously, if you're going to ice them, don't do this. Right, there we are. That's pretty much it. So have a go. I hope you enjoy these. They're great fun to make with children, and although these are really Easter biscuits, and so we've got a chicken and bunnies, you could use any shape cutter that you like if you're working with little people. Have fun. Bye.